Welcome to Know Your Universe, where we explain things that just don't fit into a story, an origin, or a rant. But we want to keep you guys current on some of the more interesting information. So let's go over the current origin of the symbiotes and the Venom symbiote itself. Now this has been revealed in one of the recent Guardians of the Galaxy story arcs, Planet Venom, and that complete story will be coming out very shortly next week. We're also going to be going over the different symbiotes that have appeared in comics, big or small. So let's get started. But before we can go into them, let's explain what are the symbiotes. Well, they actually call themselves the Klyntar, and they originate from an unnamed planet in an uncharted sector of the galaxy. They're actually a benevolent species that believes in assisting others, which they attempt to do by creating heroes through a process known as bonding to morally and physically ideal hosts. At least, that's what their intentions are. Because if they bond with a host that has a chemical imbalance or is culturally malaligned, the symbiote will become corrupt. Now, the corrupted Klyntar are the ones that we've known throughout the history of Marvel Comics. These are the ones that try to conquer and overtake planets by infecting them. And the corrupted ones will force their hosts to perform death-defying feats in order to feed off of the resulting rushes of adrenaline and other hormones. The hosts would then become so exhausted that they would eventually just die from these stunts. Now, this is the problem for the peacekeeping Klyntar, as they wish to mutually bond to use their genetic memory to aid species in the galaxy with those heroes that they wish to make. But due to the fact that everyone only knows them as the corrupt Klyntar, they are feared and unable to mutually bond with anybody. The most famous of these symbiotes is the Venom symbiote. Now, the Venom symbiote somehow got involved with the parasitic corrupt Klyntar who wanted to dominate their hosts and drain them of their adrenaline. But Venom didn't want to. He chose to seek for a mutual bond, much like the peace-seeking members of the Klyntar. Because of this, he was imprisoned in a canister and condemned to die on Battleworld. While on Battleworld though, Spider-Man came across the canister and he freed the Venom symbiote. It mutually bonded with Spider-Man, and using his heroic nature, it became the hero that it was destined to become. But once Spider-Man and the symbiote returned to Earth, the symbiote began its mutual bonding process and trying to live its heroic purpose by forcing Spider-Man to go out at night instead of sleeping, and he would fight crime, which left Spider-Man all kinds of exhausted in the morning. Well, Spider-Man didn't know that the symbiote was alive, nor did he know that he was going out at night to fight crime. So once he discovered what the symbiote was trying to do, which was bond with him, he forcibly rejected it and threw it away. This would lead the symbiote to bonding with Eddie Brock, and they did bond mutually. But since Eddie hated Spider-Man so much, and the symbiote felt rejected, they teamed up to begin assaulting Spider-Man. And this is when the Venom symbiote began to become corrupted because Eddie Brock wasn't in his right mind. During this time, it spawned multiple other symbiotes, all corrupted, seeking corruptible hosts. Eddie Brock also had cancerous cells which made his adrenaline glands more appetizing to the Venom symbiote. This would further corrupt the once great Klyntar until eventually it became possessive and abusive of Eddie, to the point where he decided to sell off the symbiote and just pass on from his cancer. Well, Eddie Brock didn't die there, and he will return later when we go into another Venom symbiote known as Anti-Venom. But the Venom symbiote itself moved on to a few different hosts at this point, eventually settling on Mac Gargan, the former Scorpion. The two would go on to fight with the Sinister 12 and then become a member of the Dark Avengers. But Mac was eventually captured and the Venom symbiote was forcibly removed, which is how it eventually ended up in the hands of the US government, and they found a way to make it more obedient, and they created Agent Venom by bonding it with Flash Thompson. Now, the second most famous of the symbiotes is the Carnage symbiote. This symbiote is one of the children of Venom that he spawned, and it merged with Cletus Cassidy, a psychopath and homicidal sadist. As we stated earlier, the symbiotes become corrupted when they merge with people like this, and Cletus did a very good job of turning the Carnage symbiote into a monster. During the time when Venom and Eddie Brock were separated, the Venom symbiote freed Eddie from prison and left behind its offspring. And this is the offspring that got into Cletus' bloodstream, creating Carnage. He is a mass murderer that Spider-Man has fought multiple times at this point, including the famous story arc, Maximum Carnage. He pops up here and there fighting Deadpool, Scarlet Spider, and Agent Venom, and most recently has tried to be a good guy thanks to the Axis personality shifting event. He's also bonded with Ben Reilly during the Clone Saga, creating Spider Carnage. Now, Toxin is the spawn of Carnage, which Carnage despised. Because of his hatred for his spawn, he wanted to kill it when it was born, but he didn't have the strength at the time. So since he was weakened, he implanted it onto a man named Patrick Mulligan. Venom tried to keep the Toxin symbiote safe as he wanted it to become his new partner, but eventually, even he saw the problem that Toxin presented, as it was more powerful than Carnage and him combined. So they both fought it together with the intention of killing the Toxin symbiote until Spider-Man intervened and saved Toxin. He set Patrick Mulligan on a path to become a hero, and eventually, after a few mishaps, The Toxin symbiote agreed to let Mulligan control it as long as he gave Toxin 2 hours of playtime a night. Eventually though, Patrick Mulligan was killed, and the symbiote was removed in an attempt to bond it with clones of X-23. This also failed, and the Toxin symbiote eventually bonded back with Eddie Brock, and he becomes the newest Toxin. Now, Anti-Venom isn't really a symbiote. Eddie Brock acted as Anti-Venom when he rejected the original Venom symbiote because Mr. Negative used his white blood cells, which contain traces of the Venom symbiote still, and created Anti-Venom. He has healing abilities and a corrosive touch to the other symbiotes, but this fake symbiote died during the Spider Island storyline. Now it's time to go into some more of the minor symbiotes who have arrived for single storylines and such. First, we have the Life Foundation symbiotes. These are Scream, Lasher, Phage, Agony, and Riot. They were an attempt to create supercomps when they made these 5 symbiotes by taking the last seeds that were inside of Venom. And they placed these onto 5 security guards and popped up in a few stories until eventually Scream decided that all the symbiotes were evil and she killed all of them off. Well, without hosts, the symbiotes all merged together and they created Hybrid, and they bonded with another prison guard named Scott Washington. Eventually, Eddie Brock hunted down and killed off the host of Hybrid while he was Anti-Venom, and the government acquired all of the symbiotes and created the Mercury team to fight against Carnage later. But Carnage killed all 4 of those hosts, and Deadpool allowed the symbiotes to merge with him and defeat Carnage. Once he beat Carnage using Hybrid, he got rid of the symbiotes and allowed them to merge with the team's dog. That last bit is the storyline known as Deadpool vs. Carnage, and we'll be covering it very soon. Now we also have Dreadface from the Fantastic Four adventure. He has the ability to control individuals' minds, but he only showed up for about 1 to 2 issues from what I could find. Payback is a symbiote that bonded with the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent and is maintained by a state of bliss. She currently works as a vigilante and is the head of the group True Believers. There's one called Zlok, which is basically ZZZXX, whom eats the brains of its hosts. It was discovered by the Shi'ar Empire in 2009. Scorn is a piece of Carnage that was blown off when Sentry supposedly destroyed Carnage. It was developed into a prosthetic arm by Dr. Tanis Neves, who is now Scorn and operates as a vigilante. And lastly, we have Mania. She is a student of Flash Thompson, and this symbiote is a piece of Venom that was possessed by a demon. Not much is known about her as she arrived at the end of the last Venom series, and Flash Thompson is now in space. Now in the Ultimate Universe, the Venom symbiote is a man-made creation that was created by Richard Parker and Edward Brock Sr., and it's supposed to cure cancer, but instead, it became Venom. The Carnage symbiote is a creation of Doc Connors as he tried to toy with Peter's DNA while the Venom symbiote was still present. It doesn't require a host like the Venom symbiote. And that's your basic information on the symbiotes. But we aren't done with them yet. Don't forget to check out our Agent Venom origins and the origins of the Klyntar with the Guardians of the Galaxy storyline that's going to be coming out soon, and the Deadpool vs. Carnage storyline that will also be coming out soon. And if you want to get a Venom t-shirt, make sure you check out our TeePublic link in the description down below. They're running a sale right now, and we picked out an awesome amount of Venom t-shirts for you guys to go check out. So while you're there, you get a Comicstorian t-shirt, get yourself a Venom t-shirt, and really support the channel. We really appreciate it. Thank you guys. If you learned something new, please give the video a like and follow us on Twitter @Comicstorian.